Hello retro friends. As already promised in one of my previous videos, today I'd like to introduce you to the PI1541 floppy drive IEC drive emulation, and as a kind of beginning I just had one 1541-2 original floppy drive on my desk. And this is really the one that was sold for the C64 2 especially. So this is one of the later versions. The first versions were even bigger than this one, and it's really surprising to see how much, let's say, improvement we have seen over the last years compared to this original floppy drive. So if we just look for something that has almost the same functionality like the original drive, but it is much smaller, then we have this so-called SD to IEC mini, which is really something that kind of mimics the 1541 in kind of detail, that it is really useful for most of the applications. Most of the modern games are running on the SD to IEC mini as well. And this is very handy to kind of build this into your original C64, and so you can get rid of this original 1541. And we have seen a couple of attempts to kind of get rid of the original 1541. And here's another example. That's the 1541 Ultimate 2. So this is already the second version of this 1541 Ultimate cartridge, which is simply plugged in your C64, and then you can emulate disk drives and the functionality of the 1541 in a kind of cartridge style. And there is a new version of this as well. Let's call it the 1541 2 Plus, which looks a little bit different, works with USB sticks as well, has already a LAN connector here, and it's kind of similar to this one. You can even simulate the tape drive as well with this device. So this has make a lot of progress and makes the life of our C64 much easier compared to the original floppy drive. But there's kind of a new star on the C64 heaven, so to say, and it is called the PI1541, and it looks basically like this. So this is actually a version without a case, and there are, in the meantime, there are many different versions available, so you can get complete Pcbs on several websites, web pages. And basically it utilized Raspberry Pi, and looks basically like this without this PCB on board. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about a little bit the different versions which are available for this specific add-on for the Raspberry Pi, and we're going to build one. And we're going to talk about the differences, and as a kind of let's say small surprise, there will be a giveaway in this video as well. So I got a couple of PCBs, and if you're interested in to get one of these PCBs either as a blank PCB or together with some parts or even completely assembled, then we will talk about this later in the video, how you can kind of join the giveaway. And let's see how much progress we can make. And I already built this one a couple of weeks ago, and it is working quite fine. It has some well, let's say some minor issues, so I'm still got one of the first firmwares on it, so we may need to upgrade this a little bit. and I never got the speaker to work properly, and this is something we may have to address by changing the config or something like this. But we are not going to spend too much time with this device. We really go forward and talk about these two PCBs. As you can see, they are smaller than the first one, but they still fit perfectly to the Raspberry Pi with the help of those kind of metal pieces here. And basically they look the same, but these are two different revisions. So this is revision 2, and this is already revision 4. What I've learned so far is that revision 5 is already in development as well. And the main difference between those two is here we have the chance to add a small display as well. So I got one here for the purpose of going to use this. So this is a very small organic LED display which can be mounted to this PCB and can be used to navigate through your disk image while using the buttons on the edge of the PCB here. It looks a little bit tight, so we may have to add additional parts in between to raise this above the components we're going to assemble here. But this is going to be the second step today. We just focus on getting one of the PCBs assembled, attach this to the Raspberry Pi and see whether this is going to work or not. So hopefully it's going to work. Just to mention where you can get the PCB if you're not as lucky as to get one during the giveaway. Most of the information I learned about the P1541 are coming from a web page, and I'm going to show you the page just here. That's the metrics, okay, as usual. So as usual, most of the stuff is coming from the forum C64, forum 64, and there's a very interesting page, and it's called P1541 IO revision 2. That's basically this board. And I already made some progress to revision 4 as mentioned, and here you got all the information required, where to get the PCB, what kind of level shifter we're going to use, how we're going to configure the board and all that stuff. So I highly recommend to read through the page. Here is a whole list of components, where to get them from and all that stuff, so it's really easy to recreate this on your own. And the next thing, and this is the original source for the firmware, and I think the whole idea was coming from this page as well. It's a CPM sorry, it's the CPM Pi1541 page here, and we're going to need this page for the firmware. So we have to download this here. You can get the source code, you can change it on for your own purpose, and you can compile your own firmware, or you just get a working version here. And if you have already done this on an SD card, we just need to update the kernel, and we can download it from here. So I will post the two links in the description section as well, so you can easily click on it and get all the information which are required. And as a first step, let's go to and build one. And to have some entertainment as well, let's go to listen to some music. And as usual, it's coming from Spino 2006. And there we go. So I hope it's not going to be too loud. And let's switch back to the camera, and you can see what title is actually playing. And as I said, the list of components is available on the web page, and I got them already together, so I can build two of them. And yeah, you can see I will end up with 3 kits at the end, and I have to admit I'm not going to need them all, and I think I'm going to keep this one as one of the first ones, and I will keep another one, and I got additional 2 PCBs, one of this version, one of the Neo version, and they will be included in the giveaway section. So let's sort through this. Let me just get rid of the redundant stuff. And I'm not going to need this one, and not this. And just 2 of them. And we're going to need 5. These ones. And one of these. And we're going to need 2 LEDs. Here. We're not going to need them. And we're probably going to need this one, which is just one. Okay. Anyway, I have to look for what's that. Just simple. So, and additional to this, there are 2 options. The main thing is we have to convert the level between the C64 and the Raspberry Pi, because the C64s are based on 5 volt and the Raspberry Pi is working with 3.3 volt. And if you're going to connect those 2 volts together without any level conversion, we're probably going to kill the Raspberry Pi, or both of them, I don't know, I'm not going to try this. And as you can see on the PCB, we got the solder points for SMD components. So if you really like the challenge, then go for the SMD parts. Or if you, well, let's say, kind of lazy and just want to start right on, you can get already assembled level shifters on eBay or makershop.de or on any Asia pages for just a few cents, something like this. It's really cheap, and I was a little bit impatient, so I got all that stuff from Germany, which costs a little bit more, but it's basically not really a big deal. And now we are able to go and just solder the level shifter directly to the board, and then we are done with it. And the interesting thing with this PCB is that I'm just going to go a little bit closer. Let's see whether we can change the focus a little bit so that we can actually read the stuff on the board. So everything is really described on the board, so we can see what kind of components we have to solder in which position. Even for the small display, we got the pin layout here. That's really important because there are different versions, and you may blow up the display if you connect this to the board without paying attention to the pin layout. And for the level shifters as well, we got all the little pins described here, so there can't go anything wrong, hopefully, fingers crossed. And the interesting thing with this board as well is on the back side we got a couple of different, this way, a couple of configurations. So you can change whether the pin layout has the ground connection on the outside or on the inside. For the display, that's very important. You can select the voltage level for the display, and you can say whether you want to use the 7406 IEC, which is this one. This is required if you want to connect more than one device to your C64, otherwise you will overload the level shifters. And basically it's possible to connect up to 3 or 4 IEC devices to your C64 while having this as the master drive, for example. Perhaps you're going to test this with 2 PI1541s, and this is just to mention, and that's the main difference between the two boards. Here you can see the whole display configuration is missing because there is no way to connect the display directly to the board, but you can use the outputs from the Raspberry Pi, which are routed through the pins here directly to the PCB, to connect your display as well. So this is more for the sake of comfort, but functionality wise this is going to work almost the same. So, and to have some action now, let's go and solder that stuff. So we're going to need something to get that stuff on the board already. Then we may need to cut some legs. Let's go for this one. And I think basically that's the start. And what you need as well is some kind of like a socket or something like this to kind of bridge the distance between the two devices. As you can see, this is much higher because this PCB is kind of inside out, button down, whatever. So all the components are on the underside, makes it a little bit more compact, and but therefore we need more distance, and this is not required for this one, but we need this kind of socket bar, whatever. But basically I'm struggling to get it off the board because the adhesive strip is so tight. So let's see whether this is going to work. Yes. I was afraid that the whole session will come to an end because I'm not able to get rid of this adhesive stripe. But finally it worked. Need this for something else. So this fits perfectly to the Raspberry Pi, and this needs to be assembled onto this board. And this is probably something we do as one of the latest steps. So basically I start with all the flat components. So let's go for the resistors. And we got 1K and we got 220K, and there's nothing written on it. Oh, okay, that's the 1K. So these are the smaller ones, and since it is very tight, we do not need any help to bend the legs because we have to do this as close as possible. So let's go for this. That's the first one, and let's go for the second one as well. So the design of this PCB is very, very compact, and this makes it a little bit tricky to assemble all the parts, but the density is not so high, so I guess it's not going to be a big problem. And you may ask the question why it is required to have a Raspberry Pi to emulate a floppy drive. So the interesting thing is that the 1541 was developed as the main drive for the C64, but Commodore had in mind that this drive should be compatible to other Commodore models as well. And basically the floppy drive is nothing else like a, let's say, small C64, kind of a VIC-20 or something like this. It runs its own CPU. That's the 6502, so that's the small brother of the 6510 CPU, and it has two IO chips, very similar to the CIA, to the CIA chip in the C64, used in the C64. And so the whole communication is really based on kind of let's say intelligence on the 1541 side, and there are even programs which were using the CPU in the 1541 drive for some calculations. So there's one interesting program that calculates call it fractals pictures based on mathematic formulas, like the Mandelbrot set, the Apfelmännchen. And therefore it is not so easy to emulate the drive, and therefore it is really required to have some power. And so that's the main requirement why this PI1541 is really needed to use a Raspberry Pi 3 model. So the smaller ones, the 1, the 2 and the X are not working actually. You really have to go for Raspberry Pi 3, which is basically not that expensive, but compared to the SD to IC devices, it's a little bit, well, costly. So I think they are available between 30 and 35 euros, something like this, where the cheapest SD to IC devices are around 20-25 euros or something like this. But well, let's continue with this. Now we have to get those big parts on it. It's really surprising that we need such huge resistors here, and they do not fit to the layout at all. I'm just a little bit confused, but well, that's the task. Let's get it done. So I just assume there are better versions available, so that's maybe an issue of availability. It's not looking very nice, to admit, but basically we have to go for it. I don't have anything else, but this is going to be a very tight story. Got some bended legs here, so let's see whether we can get them back into shape. And this is going to be the challenge. We got one LED here, the resistor and this IC. This looks like a very tight story. So we may get a different resistor for the next version. So this is really not very nice, I have to admit. But, well, for the sake of demonstration, let's go for it. Okay, so I was a little bit lazy, so I got this kind of assembly kit from the Forum 64, and I haven't paid that much attention whether all the parts are really fitting to the board. And perhaps if we're going to build this without 7406, then everything would be fine. But I will check whether I can find some different resistors somewhere, so that we can have a much better looking version, so to say. Well, it looks a little bit experimental, but anyway, as long as it is working, it should be fine. So let's solve the small points here. Oh, just forgot to refocus the video. I'm sorry for this. Now it looks much better. and perhaps to talk about the whole operation a little bit. So if you are familiar with the Raspberry Pi, you already know that you can use this as some kind of small computer replacement. So it got plenty of connections like network and USB, and you can even add a speaker here, USB connection to power up the whole thing. And we got an HDMI output, and that's the interesting thing. You can connect the PI1541 to a HDMI display, and then you can select your disk image and do all the stuff with the help of the HDMI display, which has some, well, kind of comfort, but for the usage as a disk drive emulation, it is perhaps a little bit, let's say, overkill. But especially for the initial steps, like getting the firmware running and checking some options and all that stuff, it's really something I recommend. And so what's missing? Capacitor. And therefore the idea to use a smaller display is very interesting. And the funny thing is that it is not just possible to use a small display like this. You can use almost any type of display which is working with the no, I forgot it. I2C protocol, I think it was. Oh, I'm sorry. So that's kind of a standard to connect different devices together. And I've seen versions with bigger screens as well, like a 5-inch or 7-inch or something like this. And then it is really up to you to build some kind of interesting case. So I have seen the PI1541 built into an original floppy drive case, which for my taste is quite huge. But it is even possible with some mechanical work to use the original cases for the Raspberry Pi as well. So there are plenty of options, and I think we should go for the level shifter now. So it's probably a good idea to make it like this, to keep it quite flat. And we just have to check we do it in the right way. There's actually one small downside of this whole thing. It is the power which is required to run the PI1541. So you need quite a certain amount of power, because the Raspberry Pi requires at least 1 ampere of current, and therefore you need a good, let's say, power supply, and therefore you can't connect this to your C64 directly, because there is really no option to get that much power out of the C64 without blowing any parts. And even if you're going to use a very strong power supply like the one for the C128, which is able to provide 2.5 ampere of current over the 5 volt connection, there is actually no chance to get this power out of your C64 again. Like most of the SD to IC devices which are connected to the tape port to power them, it is not possible in this case, because the tape port is only able to deliver about 100 to 200 milliampere of current, and this is really a huge difference compared to the PI1541. And so it looks a little bit screwed, but anyway. Let's see whether we can adjust this a little bit. Or we may have to apply some force, get this a little bit low into the PCB. So you need some kind of USB power supply, so it can be any, let's say, mobile phone charger or so. It works very fine. Or I'm running this thing basically over my USB hub, which has an additional power supply. And this is probably something that requires some ideas, so I'm thinking about kind of building a combined power supply for the C64 plus the Raspberry Pi, just to have one thing to power them all. And this could be one project, or perhaps there's another idea to kind of bypass the voltage from the original C64 power insert directly to the Raspberry Pi, so you can use a stronger power supply like the mentioned C128 one, but you do not go over the main board of the C64. So now we got all that stuff on it, so let's go for the small switches. Maybe as some kind of background, this whole PI1541 project started initially with let's say just the level shifter. So basically, to get this whole thing running, it is really just required to use the level shifters to convert the level from the C64 to the Raspberry Pi, and anything else can be done directly with the Raspberry Pi. So if you connect a USB keyboard to the Raspberry and have the HDMI display connected, then you're done. So that's basically everything you need. So this whole additional PCB hookup boards, it's just for the sake of comfort, so that you're not required to use an USB keyboard, so that you're not required to use a HDMI monitor or something like this. So, but for the sake of simplicity, if you really want to go this way, then just get some small components at eBay or somewhere else, and use the wiring mentioned on the project page, and then you can go straight ahead into the emulation part, or you just get the pre-assembled level shifters, and then you're kind of set. So, and interestingly, if you look around, there are several sources for this different types of PCBs, and I've seen assembled ones as well appearing at eBay or different pages. So this is going to be the next kind of generation of C64 drives, and there's a huge community as well, and I've learned recently that especially the other disk file formats like the 1571 and the 1581 are in development, and if this is actually done, then this is the one-fits-all solution for all the disk drives available for the C64, and especially the 85 the 1581 disk drive, yes, now right, offers a huge potential, because there are so many disk conversions from multi-disk games in this format. It's a very, very comfortable and handy format, and then you can run most of the multi-disk games with one disk image without changing disks at all. So now we just have to get this part done, and then we're basically very close to the end. So I'm building this one without a speaker because I have no speaker right now. And if you expect to have the same, let's say, noise like a original an original 1541 floppy drive is producing, then you will be probably disappointed, because right now the speaker is just kind of creating some beeps. So if you have a 1541 Ultimate 2 Plus, for example, which comes with an internal speaker and which produces some kind of floppy drive noise, then this is not comparable. So the speaker is really just creating some beeps. You can configure the beeps in kind of frequency and length, but it's not really the same noise like an original floppy drive is producing. So I think for the purpose of this video it's not really a problem if you just leave this. So almost done with this one. And now we just need to assemble the reset, which is hopefully not required as often. So if you have paid attention to the PCB I have here, you can see we got 5 buttons as well and no reset taster. And basically during the time I was using this one, I never required the reset taster at all. So I'm actually not really sure why we're going to need this, but sometimes perhaps it is required. And I think it's just going to reset the Raspberry Pi. So this can be accomplished by simply disconnecting the USB power. But anyway, so now we got this stuff done. Then let's go for the LEDs. And as usual, I think I'm going to make it wrong. The more I'm trying to make it right, the more I fail with LEDs on boards, but perhaps this time there's a small chance that I get it right. So as you can see, building the PCB is really kind of piece of cake. It's really just a few steps, very easy components, and beside the small mistake with this huge resistors, it's not really very special. So just in case we have to turn them around, let's leave some small room to get them back on the board. And the very last thing we need to do is to get this IEC connector on the board. So basically it's going to be on this side. Got some bended legs here as well. And then we are almost done with it. So as I said, the firmware for this PI1541 is in development almost all the time. There's a huge community working on several issues and ideas, and what I've seen so far is that the PI1541 as a whole device is working with some of the fast loaders as well. Some people are running this with this with this certain ROM set to have a floppy speeder implemented, and it works with the final cartridge as well as a turbo cartridge or something like this. So you've got almost the same functionality. There are some minor issues here and there, but people are working on it constantly, and we have seen a huge progress on this already. So, and as a very final step, let's see whether we can get this display here attached. And as I said, no, it's not going to work. We just need something to kind of extend this a little bit. And I have to check my big box of parts. Now I can find it quite quickly. I'm very sure I got something like this, but the tricky point is, as usual, to find it. So this could be helpful. Let's see. I think this is not going to fit. Nope. That's not going to work. So perhaps we have to skip this part, or no. It looks close, but that's not what we are looking for. 270. So these are 270 ohm required, or 220, but they are small, so they could work perhaps. I don't know. So perhaps an old CPU socket could work. So let's see whether we can find something like this. Or we have to use some wires. Probably not what I was looking for. Got so much stuff in my boxes, but this is missing. Or we do it kind of quick and dirty. And just extend the legs a little bit. So, just lost a part. Probably from here. So. So this type of display is pretty sensitive. So especially the corners here. This is glass. And it's very, very thin, as you can see. And if you break this part, the display won't work. So that's kind of a key learning. So we really need to be careful. And let's see whether we simply solder longer legs to it. So my bag of leftover parts should provide something that's going to be helpful. Here we go. This is what I was looking for. So let's get rid of it. What's that? There's another one, just in case. Keep it there. So get this back into this. So. Okay. It's not going to win any prizes in terms of best looking mod ever or something like this, but basically that's actually not the purpose. And let's just get some soldering material on it on this side and here as well. And then we may need to hold this in one hand and this in the other, and then we can connect this to each other like this. I'm doing this for the other pins as well, and I think then we are set with this. Let's get rid of it. And here we go. Almost perfect, I would say. So just need to get one leg connected, and then we can adjust this slightly and get the other ones connected as well. Oops. Okay, so just some minor adjustments. Get this into a good position. I think that's fine enough. And that's basically the main assembly of this device. As mentioned at the very beginning, we need to configure this a little bit, and therefore we have to set a couple of jumpers on this side. So there is a small line of jumpers which we need to bridge. If you're going to use the 7406 version, so let's solder the points here, and I think we can go and ignore this for the purpose of this video, but let's have a look. I mean, we got some information, so we should use it. No, it's black. Oh no, here we are back again. So I think it was on this page, because that's the page about the board. The level shifter, here we go. Option A, option A. If you configure your board for option B, the following components are required. Bypass cap, 2 1K pull-up resistors. R3, R4. R3, R4. Where is it? R3, R4. These are the smaller ones. Oops. R3 or 4. Okay, we got them. That's fine. The bypass cap is C1. That's this one. Got this as well. And therefore we are running option B, and so we have to set the jumper to option B. And as a very final step, we have to configure the bus for the display. So I just guess that we have to set the voltage. So let's go for 3.3. And then we have to say IC config. It's ground. VCC ground, and we have a display that requires ground and VCC. So then we have to solder those two jumpers. Bus 1, bus 2. And I think those two solder jumpers. And I think, well, that's basically all. So I think out of the box it's not going to work, because we need to configure something on the firmware for the Raspberry Pi as well. But for the sake of finishing the video, we just going to run a short test, and hopefully nothing will go up in flames. So as we can see, it looks pretty tight here. We may have to add something onto the PCB, and I just recognized that I soldered this socket here a little bit screwed, bended, whatever, which looks indeed not very nice, but well, let's see whether this will work. And we may just add some kind of insulating material to avoid getting some shortcuts. I thought I got something that may work for this quite perfectly. So for the next device I have to pay more attention to the alignment of the socket line. So it's an interesting learning, and so can get it off. Okay. Never assume that this is going to be the hardest point of the video. But we're making progress. Finally. Here we go. So, let's just cover this part here. And then we put this back. And nice. Very nice. So, as I mentioned, we're going to need some USB power. And basically I got one cable on my desk that should provide what we are looking for. And this is this one. And to check whether we are able to see something, we need an HDMI connection, and we have to switch over to different input. And now, fingers crossed. Hopefully we're not going to blow up everything. At least the LED is on, which means this time I got it right with the LEDs, and we have some kind of a picture. Actually having a hard time to sync the HDMI, which is a little bit surprising. So then, oh, here we go. Okay, basically it is working. Now we just have to, okay, learn how the buttons are working. Okay, we can now go up and down, and we can probably select, no, that's kind of jumping back to the top. What's this button? Exit folder, add disk, start emulation. So the first button should start a disk image. Let's see. Loading steel range. This looks fine so far. So let's give it a small test whether we can load something. And I think since this video is about the hardware, we should stop there, and then I will do some investigation, some testing, how to get the display running and all that stuff, and how to upgrade the firmware and all that things, and then we will have another video talking about those things in detail. So for this purpose we're going to need a keyboard as well, so we need some more space here, and basically we want to see something. So here you can see it's a little bit tricky because the connection is all on this side. But this, we need some power. We have to keep away those tiny things, they can kill a lot of things. And a keyboard, finally. So, and then let's just type in some blind comments and see whether something is happening or not. Basically not. So we can't see anything. Why is that? Looks like the C64 has started, but we are not seeing. We can't see anything. That's strange. There we go. Okay. So then let's try it again. Maybe just searching for. So actually it looks like it's doing something, but perhaps it's not doing what we are looking for. Let's switch back to the Raspberry. It's definitely having a hard time to sync to the picture, which is a little bit surprising. I never had this issue with this one, so, but I never tested the other one as well. Perhaps it's running in some kind of strange video mode. So let's try something else. Let's disconnect the HDMI. Wait a second. And put it back. Here we go. So actually it's not doing anything. So perhaps I have to work on the config file to say which configuration we are using, which bus we are using, and all that stuff. And as I said, this is going to be the part of the next video. I'm just going to finish this here. I just want to talk briefly about the giveaway. As I mentioned at the beginning, I got some PCBs as kind of leftover, and I'm offering the revision 2 board and I'm offering the revision 4 board as pure PCB or as an assembly kit or as completely assembled. So actually I got enough components to build one of it. So one lucky guy can get a blank PCB and one lucky guy can choose between an assembly kit or a fully assembled version. And how you're going to attend to this? As usual, you can use the comment section to write down that you are interested in to get this. You have to mention what you want to get. And if everybody is going for the fully assembled thing, I have to choose by random who is getting what. And as a small challenge, I just want to know what is visible in almost all of my videos. So this is going to be the question, and I'm really looking forward what you're going to mention there. And as a small hint, it is definitely related to the C64. So if you're going to mention my PC mouse or something like this, then that's probably not the right answer. And I'm really looking forward what kind of answers I'm going to get. And for perhaps not the next episode, but the episode after the next episode, we will have some kind of randomly choice whatever thing. I'm trying to make up something funny, and then we will select the winner of this giveaway, and then we have to get in contact about address and all that stuff, and then I will going to send you either the PCB or the assembly kit or the assembled kit at all. And well, that's basically the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching, and as usual, if you have any ideas, comments whatsoever, please feel free to use the comment section. If you want to stay informed about the other videos and all that stuff, if you have any special requests or something like this, feel free to subscribe, use the comment section, ask for things, whatever you want to do. And well, thank you very much for watching, and see you for the next video. Bye bye.